These ships generate $36 billion a year for the US in economic impact, so let's look at what they are and how they do it. For those of you who don't know, these ships are bulk carriers, but more specifically, Great Lakes bulk carriers, or also known as Lakers. Great Lakes freighters carry numerous things, including taconite pellets, limestone, coal, salt, grain, etc. But Great Lakes freighters are unique in many ways, one of which being that some consist of two superstructures instead of the traditional one being at the bow and the other at the stern. This practice ended in the 1970s when ships on the lakes were then constructed with one superstructure at the stern like their ocean-going counterparts. On the spar deck of the vessel, or what you can observe as the flat portion of the ship, is where the ship's hatches are. These are rectangular-like voids on the deck covered by hatch covers, which are rectangular sheets of metal. Their purpose is to allow a place for the cargo to enter the vessel's holds. When a ship reaches port, the hatch crane, which is the machine found on deck, moves over top of each hatch cover and lifts them up. Then a dockside loader will load the cargo onto the vessel. But this process is more than loading a ship with cargo. It's a billion-dollar business. A business that costs companies $1,000 an hour just to operate one of these freighters. Let's look into the ships that make $36 billion a year and how they do it. Iron ore, coal, limestone, salt, grain, etc. These are all cargoes that the US couldn't do without. But why? Well, let's look into each one, starting off with iron ore, or it's now more accurately referred to as taconite pellets. You see, after World War II, the once vast iron ore deposits in northern Minnesota were nearly exhausted. This was a problem because iron ore was responsible for the making of steel. A solution needed to be found, or else the US would have to look elsewhere for their once plentiful material. So attention was turned to taconite, as the rock had some iron in it, but it was only 27% in total, a minuscule amount compared to iron ore. Therefore, a process was established called pelletization, which extracted the iron and formed the rock into marble-sized balls. If you want a more in-depth history and explanation of this process of taconite pelletization, I have a video linked in the description that goes into detail on it. Once the taconite goes through the pelletization process, they are sent to different ports along Lake Superior and loaded onto ships. Then, the taconite pellets are delivered to steel mills, where they are made into steel. This steel is used in the car you drive, the buildings you see, the planes you fly in, the bridges you drive on, the everyday appliances you use, and more. But taconite, of course, isn't the only crucial cargo carried on the lakes. Another is limestone. This sedimentary rock is mined in quarries in Michigan. In fact, the calcite limestone quarry in Rogers City, Michigan, is the biggest in the entire world. Limestone is used for many different things, some of those being the steelmaking process, in the making of cement, and road making, as a filler for paint, and more. Limestone is a key part of our country and remains as one of the most shipped cargoes on the Great Lakes each year. Another cargo is coal. But on the lakes, two types of coal are transported: eastern high-sulfur coal and western low-sulfur coal. Here are the differences. Eastern high-sulfur coal is mined in West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. Additionally, it has a higher BTU rating. Low-sulfur coal is mined in Montana and Wyoming and has a lower BTU rating. BTU is short for British Thermal Rating. It determines how much energy is used and the output from that energy. In the case of coal, this would be how much of the coal is burned and the heat that results from that. So, a lower BTU rating would mean that more coal has to be burned to achieve the same amount of heat that a higher BTU rating would. So then why even use the coal with the lower BTU rating? Well, because it causes less pollution. Low-sulfur coal is used in power plants on the Great Lakes, which provide electricity for cities nearby. Eastern low-sulfur coal is used to power blast furnaces and in the production of coke, something that is used in the steelmaking process, not the drink. The next cargo is one you're probably familiar with, and maybe has even helped you drive safe in the winter: salt. Most of the salt shipped on the lakes comes from Goderich, Ontario, and its Sifto salt mine, and are sent to Duluth, Milwaukee, and other ports for use in the winter. Although salt shipped on the lakes is used mostly for road salt, some of it is used for food. Which leads to our next cargo: grain. Wheat, oat, soybeans, flaxseed, barley, and more. Some of these grains will go to Windsor, Ontario, and Buffalo, New York, but most are for delivery overseas. Another cargo shipped on the lakes is cement. The cargo is carried in a powder form and kept watertight so it doesn't become wet and solidify. Alpena, Michigan is a large exporter of the cargo. Green Bay, Wisconsin, Duluth, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Wisconsin are among the destinations for cement on the Great Lakes. These ships are fast, but in a different way than you would assume. They are faster compared to other modes of transportation. Why? Well, let's look at the Polar Tjugurtha, the largest vessel on the lakes at 1,013 feet in length. The ship can carry up to 68,000 tons of cargo. For a train to match that, it would need 700 rail cars, each carrying 22 tons. A train would have to take several trips to match what a lake freighter can take in one. In order for trucks to match that, there would need to be 2,800 of them, each being able to carry 25 tons, which also is outrageous. But this isn't the only thing that makes these freighters fast. I mentioned that many of these freighters have assets. One of those would be their self-unloading systems. This system works through use of conveyor belts. Cargo in the hold drops from a sloped cargo hold and flows into a conveyor belt at the bottom of the cargo hold that drops it onto another conveyor belt that sandwiches the cargo between another belt and drops the cargo onto the belt on the unloading boom, or what you could also describe as the crane-like structure on deck. That self-unloading boom can swing to either side of the vessel and unload the cargo onto the dock or into a storage unit. Some vessels vary in certain aspects of their system, as some don't have sloped cargo holds and require front-end loaders to dump the remaining cargo into the belt, and some feature a bucket elevator. Nevertheless, these unloaders make these ships faster and more self-sufficient, which in turn, of course, means more money. Speaking of money, these ships are cheap. Of course, not literally, but comparatively. Great Lakes freighters can sail up to 607 miles on 1 gallon of fuel for every ton of cargo. In fact, ships are 7 times more fuel efficient than trucks, and 1.14 times more fuel efficient than rail, and with the same amount of fuel, ships on the lakes can travel 14% farther than rail and 594% farther than trucks. Because ships are fuel efficient, they save money for companies and our country. The numbers for how these ships affect jobs is insane. The maritime industry on the Great Lakes supports 147,350 jobs, give or take, and this is just for the US. In Canada, that number is 93,936, totaling up to 241,286 jobs in total. This generated just over $36 billion for the US in economic activity, almost $18 million in personal income, and nearly $27 million in business revenue. These ships are the backbone of the US, the essentials to our country. They provide cargoes that are needed in the making of steel, the building of roads, the base of buildings, the safety of our roads, the energy for some of our cities, the food we eat, the list goes on. It's no wonder that these ships generate $36 billion in economic activity for the US each year. Anyway, subscribe for more shipping information videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.